Yo, what's up, guys? All right, so welcome to day 8 of the 1,000 contact challenge. So today, what I focused on the golf course was first hitting a bunch of wedges. I got 3 hours of short game practice in. I hit wedges on the range. I also had Joey Herrerah come in as a celebrity and kind of give a little bit of advice as what he does on his wedges, because he's a professional who's really good, played in the US Open, and he knows better than most. So today's going to be a lot of wedge work. Let's get to it.
Usually the first thing I do to practice my wedge game, it's an important part of the game to really dial in, is I drop it, get rid of that club and grab driver and just swing as hard as you can on those, because no one cares about your wedge game. We care about long bombs. The way I get my wedge game dialed is this is kind of the one time where I think, using some technology is really good. Being able to use a launch monitor or something like that to really dial in your yardages. I like to do 10-yard increments. I usually start around 50 yards, because I think inside that's a ton of feel. So I think, doing 50, 60, 70, 80, 90 yards, kind of a ladder drill is really important and can improve that wedge game pretty quickly.
All right, you guys, so let's talk about working wedges. So the way I like to start is with a short distance and then progressively make it longer as I start to get my feels. So first, I normally work a basket drill, but sometimes when nature presents a place for me to aim towards, I'm going to use that, especially when I'm on the driving range. As you guys can see, there's a patch of dirt over there. There's another target, which I'll show you guys in a second. I'm going to aim at those two things. I already shot with my rangefinder. That first patch of dirt is 40 yards. The next one is 50 yards away. So what I'm going to do is make that my landing area. The nice thing about that dirt patch, it's a pretty decent sized circle. It's probably a 7-8 foot circle around. If I can land my ball inside of that circle, that's a hell of a golf shot, because that's a pretty tight landing area from 40 yards. So I'm gonna hit a bunch of shots at that. Then I'm gonna go to my 50-yard target. And if I have other targets around, I'll switch it up. It's really nice when they work out at even yardages, but I also find it's really important to hit the off yardages, something like 43 or 47 or 52, something that's not with the perfect zero after it, because when we really play on the golf course, how often does that happen? So I'm gonna hit some shots. I'll kind of show you guys the targets I'm hitting towards, but that'll be the main focus of my wedges today. And then as I get better with the short distances, I'll start moving to longer ones in the future. All right, so let's go over a quick review of the day. So started off by going to the driving range. My buddy Joey was there. We hit a bunch of wedges. I focused on 40 to 50 yards, hit some at 80 yards as well. And like Joey said, what he does is when he gets inside 50 yards, he'll do basically all feel, and then from 50 yards out, he'll do a ladder drill. Where, for you guys who don't know, a ladder drill is where you start off at 50 yards, and then you go either in 5 or 10-yard increments. So just like if you laid a ladder on the ground, every ring represents 5 or 10 yards, and you keep working your way out or you work your way in, whichever direction you like. So for him, he goes 50 yards, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100, however far he wants to go, and he keeps trying to hit clubs to that yardage. For the first several, I'm sure it's a lob wedge. At some point, it's a lob wedge, sand wedge combo, then it becomes sand wedge, then sand wedge, gap wedge combo. He just keeps working his way out. That's what makes him feel like he hits his wedges his best. And if you have the opportunity, do it on a launch monitor. It'll tell you exactly how far you're hitting it. And if you don't, there's a more practical solution. First, hopefully your driving range has nice yardages out there, or at least a couple flags with good yardages. But if they don't, what I recommend doing is late in the evening when you get off work, whenever you have time, hopefully it's not too windy, go on the golf course, bring 5 to 10 golf balls if you can, and drop them at 50 yards on one hole. Then on the next hole, do it at 60 yards. The next one do it at 70, the next one do it at 80 yards, and just hit 5 or 10 shots from those yardages and just get a sense of how hard are you swinging, How much is your ball spinning back? Are you doing it better with your sand wedge or your gap wedge or whatever wedge it is? And just do it on the golf course. A lot of good work can be done on the golf course. And if anything, you could argue it could be better work because you can't really get into so much of a rhythm. It represents more of how you're going to actually play golf. And on top of that, you're going to get different pin locations, some back pins, some front pins, some tuck left, some tuck right, some in the middle of the green. You're going to actually see the ball spin back or release forward. It's just a little bit more representative of what's going on. So the pros of a driving range is you can hit high volume. The pros of a simulator is that it's going to tell you exactly your number. And the pros of being on the golf course is that it feels like you're on the golf course. So all of them are good. Whichever ones you have, or hopefully you have multiple, get out and do them, because every pro will tell you you got to be a good driver, you got to be a good putter, and you got to have a good wedge game. You can be okay with your irons, you can be okay with your hybrids and woods, but the rest of the bag you got to be very good at if you want to score. So getting your wedges in is important. So we did that for a few hours. And then actually at the end of that, me and Joey kind of had a conversation. He goes, I feel like the more I practice, the worse I get. And then you have this, 1,000-shot challenge. Do you feel like you're actually getting better, or do you feel like you're not getting better at all from this challenge? And for me, I've always known, not always, I had to figure it out, but ever since college, I've known that roughly 80% practice and 20% playing is kind of my formula for my best golf. If I'm practicing 80% of my golf shots and the other 20% are on playing on the golf course, then I know I'm going to be pretty sharp. For me, I've always looked at the higher repetitions I can have, the more technique I can get in, the more touch I can develop. I just get better with high repetition and high volume. But on the flip side, Joey does better when he just goes out and plays a bunch and just does a little bit of practice. And he just kind of needs to make sure his technique is good enough. He kind of sees the pattern he wants. Otherwise, spend as much time on the golf course as he can. And everybody's different. I would imagine if you looked at somebody like Ben Hogan, he wants to practice 95% of the time. I don't know exactly what it is, but that would be my guess. If he was playing all the time, I would guess he'd be a worse golfer. Or if he took big breaks, I'm guessing he would be a worse golfer just based on how he spoke about his golf game. And then way back in the day, in the 90s, there's this golfer with a famous story. His name's Bruce Litsky, where at the end of his PGA Tour season, I believe, which ended in November at the time, his caddy just didn't believe that he would take the offseason and not practice at all. He's like, that has to be bullshit. There's just no way you can be a PGA Tour winner and not practice in the offseason. So what he did was he took a banana from the final event, put it underneath his driver head cover after the event was done, and be like, I bet you this banana is going to be gone when he comes back to the next PGA Tour event, which is going to be in January, because he's going to practice, he's going to play some golf. Lo and behold, when they came back to the desert in California in January, there was a mushy, old, rotten, nasty banana under that head cover. Bruce Litsky didn't touch his clubs at all during the winter, at all during his break. So even on the PGA Tour, which is, I'm sure, probably non-existent nowadays, but even in the 90s back then, there were players who would take a month and a half off, 2 months off, not touch a golf club, and then come back and play a PGA Tour event. So it just goes to show you that everybody's formula is different. I bet if Tiger played more than he practiced, he'd probably play worse golf. And on the flip side, if John Daly was exclusively a practicer and barely played, I bet he would get worse. So the moral of that story is that, I have this challenge right now. I don't know how long I'm going to do it for. Long enough to where hopefully I feel like I've gotten better at my golf game. But my goal right now is to have 1,000 contacts. It's a really, really high volume game. But that doesn't mean it's for everybody. Everybody kind of has to find their formula to where their personal best golf lives. Maybe you're exclusively a person who should play golf more. Maybe you're a person who needs to practice 95% of the time. Maybe you're a 50-50 person, or a 60-40 or 70-30, whatever it ends up being. But you got to find where that is. And the best way to do it is take it to the extremes. Most of us have probably had periods where we just play and we don't practice. We probably already know what that extreme is. But go to the other side of the spectrum. See if for 10 or 20 or 30 days in a row, even if it's not for very long, it could be a half an hour, whatever it is, see if you can practice every single day without playing, and then come back to the golf course, and next time you play, see if you feel better or if you feel worse or if you feel the same. And then from there you say, okay, now I know kind of both extremes. Now let me taper it down. If I go to the golf course 4 days a week, now let me try and practice 3 days and play 1 day. And then try it again where you practice 2 days and play 2 days. Kind of experiment with whatever it is, however often you go to the golf course. I'm not trying to set a number on it for you. But whatever it is, try and find your balance to see what works best for you. Now, objectively, Most people don't practice enough. That's the main thing I see when I give lessons or play enough for that matter. They just say that they want to be better golfers. They put a golf club in their hands once a month or once every other week at best. And, they complain about consistency, but they're not putting in enough reps. So for those players, if you're just not getting to the golf course very much, just put a club in your hands. Again, I can't stress enough. Hit foam balls at your house, putt on the carpet, just swing through the air and don't even hit a golf shot. Hopefully you can get to the golf course and hit some as well, but just get repetitions in. If you're not putting in any reps, I can almost guarantee, unless you are the absolute exception to the rule like Bruce Litsky, that putting a club in your hand is going to help. But if you do put a club in your hand a sufficient amount, find the balance. See if you're more of a player, see if you're more of a practicer, see if you're kind of more 50-50. It's a really important thing for everybody to find out because it's very important to be balanced. There's also a mentality that goes to this. Are you excited to the golf course and play? Do you feel like you're getting burnt out? Do you feel like you're wasting your time on certain things? These are things to manage as well. So it was an interesting conversation, one that I've had in the past, but it was interesting that Joey brought it back up. And yeah, that's my advice. Start with the extremes, then try and taper it in from both sides and just see where you fall on the spectrum. So that was kind of the take-home message of the day. And then the final thing I did for the day is I wrapped up with some putting. Got that in, got my 1,000 shots in, so it was good. Wedges are feeling good. I hit 600 wedges today in my practice. Around the greens are starting to feel very good. My wedges from 50 to 100 yards are starting to get better too, but especially around the greens, I feel like, all right, I'm starting to hit my stride. It's almost back to 100%. It's not crisp, sharp, like I don't have to think about it, but it's damn near there, which means I can really start to tone down my short game now. I can focus more on wedges. I can focus more on putting and more on my full swing and start to bring those things back into play. Again, grass clippings is going to be more like 150 yards and in, and putting. So that's going to be my biggest focus. I'm not going to worry too much about driver and my long irons. I'll hit them, but it won't be the biggest focus. The most I have to worry about my full swing is just hitting 8-iron and down, 9-iron and down, and getting those things dialed in. So that's how the day went. Hopefully it was helpful for you guys in some way. But we'll be here again to do it tomorrow. Again, don't know how long this challenge is going to be, just because there's other stuff in life that I have to kind of catch up on. But I'm going to do it again until I feel like my game is sufficient and thorough. I have been enjoying it so far, so we'll see where it takes me. Later.